And then they blow woke smoke to make up for it, saying that 2 + 2 = 4. Math is racist. That's something you started to hear last year. Well, math is not racist, but what might be wrong and inequitable is failing to teach kids in cities across this country how to do math.
Hello and welcome to the DOGE and Maha News channel. My name is Chris. In this video, we're going to react to a video from September of 2023 when Vivek Ramaswamy was still a presidential candidate. And here he is talking about shutting down the Department of Education. So he was talking about this even before the term DOGE, or the Department of Government Efficiency, was even coined. So let's go ahead and check out what he has to say.
We've got presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy with us. Vivek, good to see you again. Welcome to the show.
Good to see you.
So, you talk education a lot. We're talking trade work and trade school right now. Is that part of what you've got baked into your plan if you become president and talk about reforming education in America?
Absolutely. I'm actually talking to you from a factory in central Ohio where I just gave a speech about this very issue. We have a shortage of skilled workers and workers who have been trained in areas where we have workforce deficiencies. One of the top obstacles for many businesses to grow is to find actual employees with the right skill sets to fill those open positions. And part of the reason is that the U.S. Department of Education has spent $80 billion of taxpayer money on, among other things, subsidizing four-year college degrees without doing a thing for people going to trade schools or to get vocational education. The good news is we don't have to just complain about that. We can change that. So I've said that we would shut down the U.S. Department of Education, but move vocational training and other programs in this country to the Department of Labor. Those are the kinds of sensible solutions that we're going to need. And there are people for whom a four-year college degree may be the right choice, and that's great. They should go for it. The other thing I would say about the trades, though, is there may be people who pursue four-year college degrees that still have a component of vocational or trade education that's even built into four-year college degree programs that are now missing it. But the fact of the matter is that kind of diversity is going to be a good thing. It doesn't have to be either or. We can actually look at models where it's an and, where people who go to trade schools can learn a little bit about liberal arts, or vice versa. I think that's the way the future is going.
Vivek,
Wow, he said to shut down the Department of Education and move some of that money over to the Department of Labor so that they can support trade schools. That's a really interesting idea. What do you guys think about that?
I want to ask you about China. So many are concerned that, they're literally eating our lunch when it comes to education and so many other things. When you look at the stats, the story is pretty much there. They're first when it comes to reading and math. And we are 13th in reading and 36th in math. How do we get our kids' scores up? How do we get them more competitive on the global stage? How would you?
Wow, did you know that? 13th in reading and 36th in math. That is pathetic. What is the Department of Education doing?
You do it.
The first thing is the simplest. We have to acknowledge that the purpose of our educational system is to advance the achievement of our students. And the fact that that's controversial to say that's the sole purpose shows you what the real problem is. So what I would do is first go to school choice on steroids. Kids should not be trapped in the zip code that they're born in. Parents should be able to send their kids to the best possible schools. That holds public schools, including in poorer areas, to higher standards than they're being held today. I also think, and I know this is controversial, but I think we have to get rid of teachers' unions in this country that have perverted our educational system to being about the employment opportunities for teachers' union bureaucrats rather than being about our actual children. And then they blow woke smoke to make up for it, saying that 2 + 2 = 4. Math is racist. That's something you started to hear last year. Well, math is not racist, but what might be wrong and inequitable is failing to teach kids in cities across this country how to do math. This is personal to me because education was my ticket to get ahead. I'm the kid of immigrants who came to this country with no money. I've gone on to found multi-billion-dollar companies. I want every kid in this country to have access to that same opportunity.
Vivek.
Yeah, I think he's totally right about the teachers union. They are basically supporting their own administrative state. They're not actually interested in educating the kids. They're interested in their kind of woke agendas. Get rid of the teachers union. I also love what he has to say about school choice as well. I think that would give every kid in every community in America opportunity to actually get a good education, because there would be competition among schools for the funding for every single child they get. So the schools that were not focused on good education would lose, and the schools that were focused on good education would win. And that would benefit every single community, whether you're downtown in a big city or whether you're in a rural area or a wealthy urban area. Every area would benefit, but especially poorer areas, I think. So let me know what you think about school choice and what Vivek had to say about that.
Beck, you mentioned just a moment ago your proposal to shut down the Department of Education. I want to ask you about that a little bit. You know, on your campaign's website, you have an infographic which is helpful to understand what your plan would be. And if we can pull that up, we can show everyone that your plan is essentially to, move a lot of the responsibilities that currently fall under the Department of Education to other departments. Department of Labor, Department of State, student loans, for example, will go over to the Department of Treasury. Vivek, I wonder, though, for folks that really want to see.
Here, let's go ahead and pause and take a look at this infographic real quick. So X'd out in the red is the Department of Education. Let's see. Roughly $9 billion in bureaucracy would be cut. Grants would be reassigned. About $6 billion would go to the Department of Labor. Loans that are currently under the Department of Education would be reassigned to the Department of Treasury. Some grants would also go to the state. Some grants would go to the Department of State for foreign language study and study abroad. Interesting. Yeah. So I see how he is moving the money to different areas that kind of make more sense and getting rid of the bureaucracy of the Department of Education.
Department of Education eliminated. They might look at this plan and say, this is kind of just reshuffling the bureaucratic chairs on the deck, so to speak. Is this plan really going far enough? What do you say to people that might have that concern?
It's absolutely. So I would say the converse. You've heard a lot of people give you a lot of fancy talk about shutting down the Department of Education in the past. The reason it hasn't happened is there wasn't a pragmatic plan to actually execute it. So what I've laid out is something that we will get done in my first year in office. By the end of 2025, the U.S. Department of Education won't exist. But part of the problem is that department, that bureaucracy has become a cultural rot, telling local schools across this country that you can't get that money from the federal government unless you adopt toxic racial and gender ideologies. That's part of the culture of the Department of Education, which is why we can't just reform it, as Trump tried to do with Betsy DeVos, a good person. We have to get in there and shut it down, but I'm very practical about it to make sure that it's going to be seamless relative to the status quo for people across this country. Much of that money that you see going to the states in that plan is going to end up in the hands of parents that are actually able to use that money to send their kids to the best possible schools. In any state that has school choice programs, that's going to be a condition for giving that money back to the states.
Vivek,
so this is a radical quantum leap, and I think it's actually going to drive the change that we've been waiting for a long time in this country.
I want to drill on that a little bit, because there's a lot of parents who feel like they've gotten kicked out of the driver's seat. You know, they have primary responsibility for their kids' education, and you've got schools now who refuse to tell them what's going on in their child's life.
That's right.
How do you fix that? Is there anything you can do at the federal level to put parents back in the driver's seat and feel like they've got some control again?
The first thing I will say is I am a 10th Amendment absolutist. A lot of this will have to be driven by the local level, by states, even New Hampshire, where I'm spending a lot of time recently. It's a Republican-controlled legislature and governorship. And yet it failed to pass a bill that just said you as a parent have the right to know if your own kid is identifying as a gender different from their biological sex in school. I think that's senseless. Parents deserve transparency. Parents need to determine the education of their children. My view is if you're going to teach it in the classroom, you better put it on the internet. If you don't want to put it on the internet, then you probably shouldn't be teaching it in the classroom. Radical choice, radical transparency, but there's a role for everyone to play, both at the federal and state level. My job from the federal government is making sure that the federal government isn't quietly creating some of these problems as they are today through the U.S. Department of Education that uses grants to local schools as a cudgel to create a lot of those anti-parent policies.
Right.
So that will end under my watch, but it is going to be up to the states and localities to do their part as well. And I believe in being very frank and honest about that. I'm a constitutionalist. I like to stick to principles, That's how we're going to drive proper change in this country.
Vivek,
Yeah, the Department of Education is like a big bully. They basically say, unless you adopt our woke agenda, we're not going to give you any money. And I think that's ridiculous. And I think Vivek wants to get rid of that and actually send that money, instead of going to the Department of Education, it would go to the local school boards and be controlled that way, or directly to the parents even. I love that idea.
have a terrific live studio audience with us today, and I know they've got some great questions they want to ask you. Let's go to Jason first. I think he's got a question on the workforce shortage. Jason.
I'm Jason Altmaier. I lead the largest trade association in the country representing private post-secondary career schools. And there's a huge workforce shortage right now among critical professions, nurses, aviation technicians, truck drivers. And the Biden administration has made it more difficult for students to attend private post-secondary career schools, which are driving the pipeline that leads directly to those jobs. So my question is, what is the consequence for America if the Department of Education continues to deny access to students to pursue a post-secondary career at a high-quality for-profit institution?
Well, the consequence for America is twofold. One is it's going to be history. We've grown at over 4+% GDP growth. Now it's 1 point something as the new norm. That's wrong, but one of the obstacles for why is that we don't have enough workers with the proper skills to fill the open positions that we actually need in our country. That's also driving inflation. A lot of those supply chain shortages create supply shortages that result into higher prices, even though wages have not kept up. True. So the first consequence is economic catastrophe. I think the second consequence is the lack of competitiveness with China. China, in many cases, is not adopting these boneheaded policies. They're adopting pro-education policies, really training up a generation of not just students, but workers to power the Chinese economy. True. They have their mistakes and their troubles over there, but we have to look at one of the areas where we're not competitive as in education and in educational achievement itself. And I think those are two consequences that I'll put an end to under my watch as president. We will restore GDP growth in this country, and we will compete with American exceptionalism with any country on earth, especially and including our adversary in China. It's a great question, and the good news is the fact that Biden is actually responsible for a lot of this nonsense shows how solvable these problems also are. It just takes a president with spine and conviction, and if I may say so myself, a president from a different generation who's actually able to address the problems affecting the next generation.
Jason, thank you so much for that great question. Right now, we're going to go to Thomas with another question about trade schools. Trade schools top of mind for our folks today. Hi, Thomas.
Yes, my question is just about, because like I said, I went to college and I realized it wasn't for me, and it was hard finding a different route, a different, way to come up with a profession. Yeah. It took me a while to find it. So my question is, how can the opportunity that's in the trades be promoted better to people coming out of high school who don't want to go to college? And just, do you consider apprenticeship training important, including the related technical instruction for licensing?
Thomas, I think it's a great question. I think one of the obstacles that does get in the way is what you just put your finger on at the end there, occupational licensing regulations. Those have created unnecessary burdens that have in part been captured by special interests that then point the finger back to four-year college degrees as the only answer. You know what? Thomas Jefferson, he was 33 years old. Many of you are young people. Thomas Jefferson was young when he wrote the Declaration of Independence. He invented the swivel chair while he was at it. He didn't have to be occupationally licensed to do it. He didn't have to be an expert or a technocrat. The swivel chair that we sit in today was invented by Thomas Jefferson. Benjamin Franklin, who signed the Declaration of Independence, invented the Franklin stove and the bifocal spectacles. So if those guys can do it while they're writing the Declaration of Independence in their 20s and 30s, so too can we today. But that's the spirit we're going to have to unshackle in this country. And half the job of a U.S. president, it's not just the policy binder. That's half the job. But the other half is setting a tone of national character of what's possible. We're the pioneers. We're the explorers. Thomas, you're one of those pioneers and explorers who started in a four-year college education track but had the courage to say, hey, there's a different track that's better for me. That takes courage and conviction. And so it's people like you that set an example for the rest of this country. I believe that I'll do my part as the next U.S. president as well. But it's not just the policies. It's that culture and character we need to revive as well.
Yeah, innovation has driven so much in this country and will drive.
I think that's a really good point about the bureaucracy related to getting certified or licensed for different trades. I think it's important that these trades have some kind of certification or some kind of licensing to prove that they are competent in their area. However, I think there's probably a lot of waste there, a lot of bureaucracy, and it's a roadblock for a lot of people as well. And honestly, I think a lot of it is probably unnecessary. So hopefully DOGE can tackle that as well. So not only the Department of Education, but also these weighty bureaucracies around contractors and licensing and that kind of thing. Can they streamline it? How will they do it? I don't know. But I think that's an interesting opportunity as well.
Drive us further, but we've sort of been taking a step back from it. Vivek Ramaswamy, thanks for making time today. Great to see you.
Wow, I thought that was really good. Even though that video is roughly 15 to 16 months old, I think it's a really good insight into the way Vivek thinks, especially regarding the Department of Education and some of his plans there. I would love to see the Department of Education get basically wiped away. I think that's a really good thing for America, a really good thing for our education of our kids. I think there's a lot of benefits there. So I'm curious what you think as well. So I'm really curious about what DOGE is going to do. And if you're also curious about DOGE, you're going to want to like and subscribe to this channel, because I'm going to bring you the latest DOGE information every single day. I'm going to put out new videos, so please make sure you like and subscribe to this channel. If you do want to watch a DOGE playlist, you can go ahead and check out this playlist right here. Also, if you want to subscribe, I do have a button. Go ahead and click on that right there and you'll subscribe. Go ahead and hit that notification bell as well. I just want to say thanks a lot for watching, and I will catch you on the next one.